Hello, and welcome back to Readings in the Lutheran Confessions. My name is Pastor Jacob Swenson, St. John Lutheran Church in Hillsboro and Trinity Lutheran Church in Hope, North Dakota. We welcome you back as we continue through the book-of-concord. We have covered the Small Catechism and are now in what is known as Luther's Large Catechism. In our last time together, we covered the first part of the First Commandment, which is where Luther spends more time than anything else in the Catechism. Because for Luther, from the First Commandment flow all the other commandments. If you have the First Commandment right, all the rest will follow, and if you have the First Commandment wrong, well, then so will all the others be. And he explained kind of on a ground level what it means to have a God. Right? To have a God is whatever you look to for all things good and whatever you turn to in time of need. So is it money? Is it family? Is it your job? Is it sports? All these things are places that we put our trust in, things that we put our trust in. And Luther says the meaning of the First Commandment is that God desires that we expect all good things from Him and turn to Him in time of need. Today we're going to pick up in paragraph 16, and we'll go for about 10 minutes or so. The First Commandment, like we've said, is very long in the Large Catechism. So if you're reading along in a hard copy, or if you're at book-of-concord.org, you can find us in paragraph 16. Luther writes, "See here you have the meaning of the true honor and worship of God, which pleases God, and which He commands under penalty of eternal wrath. The heart knows no other comfort or confidence than in Him. It must not allow itself to be torn from Him, but for Him it must risk and disregard everything upon earth. On the other hand, you can easily see and sense how the world practices only false worship and idolatry. For no people have ever been so corrupt that they did not begin and continue some divine worship. Everyone has set up as his special God whatever he looked to for blessings, help, and comfort." Right, so Luther says, despite the fact that we by nature are unable to know and worship the true God, humankind has never been so corrupt that it has not had some form of worship. Now, Luther wrote this 500 years ago. I think maybe the topic of atheism was unknown to him, or it was, but only in very small numbers. Not like we have now, where there is a large and growing number of people who have no worship at all. Well, and actually that's a misnomer, because if you cast God from your heart, something else takes the place. So I'm convinced that atheism is itself a religion, but we can come back to that later. Paragraph 18. For example, the heathen who put their trust in power and dominion elevated Jupiter as the supreme god, so the Romans. Others, who were bent on riches, happiness, or pleasure, and a life of ease, elevated Hercules, Greek god, Mercury, Venus, or other gods. Pregnant women elevated Diana or Lucina, and so on. So everyone made his god that interest to which his heart was inclined. So even in the mind of the heathen, to have a god means to trust and believe. But their error is this: their trust is false and wrong. For their trust is not placed in the only God, beside whom there is truly no God in heaven or upon earth. Therefore the heathen really make their self-invented notions and dreams of God an idol. Ultimately, they put their trust in that which is nothing. So it is with all idolatry. For it happens not merely by erecting an image and worshipping it, but rather it happens in the heart. For the heart stands gaping at something else. It seeks help and consolation from creatures, saints, or devils. and neither cares for God nor looks to him for anything better than to believe that he is willing to help. The heart does not believe that whatever good it experiences comes from God. So, right, Luther says idolatry isn't just setting up an idol and worshiping it, but idolatry happens in the heart. Paragraph 22. Beside this, there is also a false worship and extreme idolatry, which we have practiced up till now. This is also still common in the world. All churchly orders are founded on it. It concerns the conscience alone, which seeks help, consolation, and salvation in its own works, right? Works righteousness. This conscience imagines it can wrestle heaven away from God and thinks about how many requests it has made, how often it has fasted, celebrated Mass, and so on. Upon such things it depends and boasts as though unwilling to receive anything from God as a gift. For it wants to earn or merit heaven with abundant works. The conscience acts as though God must serve us and is our debtor, and we are his liege lords. What is this but reducing God to an idol, indeed an apple god, and elevating and regarding ourselves as God? But this point is a little too clever and is not for young pupils. Right, so Luther moves quickly to the jugular of one of the main issues of the Reformation, is that it was commonly taught at that time, and sometimes still, that our works merit us favor in God's eyes. And so in Luther's time, people were turned to their consciences. Their consciences were directed not to God's salvation in Christ, but to their works and to their own goodness. And Luther says, this is a form of idolatry that we practiced, we as Christians, up till now, up until the Reformation. But he ends by saying, this point is this is about, right now we're at kind of a 200 level, and that topic is about a 400 level. So we'll come back to that later. Luther says in paragraph 24, let the following point be made to be simple. Then they may well note and remember the meaning of this commandment. We are to trust in God alone and look to him and expect from him nothing but good, as from one who gives us body, life, food, drink, nourishment, health, protection, peace, and all necessities of both temporal and eternal things. He also preserves us from misfortune, and if any evil befall us, he delivers and rescues us. So it is God alone, as has been said well enough, from whom we receive all good, and by whom we are delivered from all evil. So I think we Germans from ancient times name God more elegantly and appropriately than any other language from the word good. It is as though he were an eternal fountain that gushes forth abundantly nothing but what is good. And from that fountain flows forth all that is good and is called good. Even though we experience much good from other people, whatever we receive by God's command or arrangement is all received from God. For our parents and all rulers and everyone else, with respect to his neighbor, had received from God the command that they should do us all kinds of good. So we receive these blessings not from them, but through them from God. For creatures are only the hands, channels, and means by which God gives all things. So he gives to the mother breasts and milk to offer her child, and he gives corn and all kinds of produce from the earth for nourishment. None of these blessings could be produced by any creature of itself. So we'll end here on this point. Luther says that all good things come from God. And they come through various channels, whether it's from our parents or rulers or, in my context, farmers, right? Food comes from the earth, as through a channel, through the farmers, as through a channel, but ultimately from God. Now we'll end here. We'll continue on with the First Commandment next time.